So, back for another episode of Perfect Sixth. This time we're looking at countering Zacian and Kyogre, Swordfish as it has been so eloquently dubbed back in Generation 8. So, one of the main things about Kyogre is that its water spouts are incredibly strong. Wide Guard is a pretty reasonable way of being able to counter that. Water types as well will just be able to resist the water spouts that's coming out from Kyogre while also resisting Behemoth Blade. Araquanid is going to take a lot of damage from Play Rough. But if you've got Terra Poison, then that does give you the opportunity to go for that Terrestrialization, survive the Play Rough, and then get your Liquidation off. Hopefully boosted by the Rain, which will then be able to pick up the knockout on that Zacian. If the Zacian's not on the field, by the time Araquanid hits the field, that's where the substitute comes into play, because then you'll be able to safely take the attack from the Zacian. That Play Rough will be shrugged off because of the substitute, and then you'll be looking all good. Araquanid has been featured on a previous one as well, and there's absolutely going to be repeats on this series. I will mention as well, these Pokemon are in alphabetical order, not necessarily the Pokemon that I recommend the most at countering these duos, but yeah, Araquanid still seems pretty reasonable, especially because it's got Wide Guard. Hear me out. This beats the duo, right? Like, you got Water Absorb, so you're going to be taking on the Kyogre a lot better. And if you go for Terra Fire, then the Ice Beams won't be doing any damage, and you can't be hit by the Water type attack, so that's not an issue by staying weak to Water. And you're actually going to be resisting the Play Rush that's going to be coming out from Zacian as well, while hitting it super effectively with your Ground type attacks. This is weak. You better get some curses going before you're actually going to be able to do some damage. And that's where the Zoom Lens comes into play as well. I do like my Zoom Lens, because Poison Jab will not be strong enough. And High Horsepower as well, outside of hitting super effectively, probably won't be strong enough to justify the Clodsire. But by having your 120 base power in your Gunk Shot, you're actually doing respectable damage. And after one curse, the Gunk Shots will hurt. So if you can find that space to get the curse off. As well, something that's nice about the Clodsire is that if you're cursing, well, Sacred Sword ignores your defense boost, but wait a minute, you're a poison type, so you're going to be resisting the Sacred Swords as well. And if you get the curse, then you'll shrug off the Behemoth Blades as well. So, like, this works. May not be the most viable Pokemon in a restricted format that would come to mind, but it does the job. This legitimately counters Zacian and Kyogre, so if that's what you're struggling with. This is a much more reasonable one, I would argue. So Gastrodon has been classically beating Kyogre every single generation that it's been available. Like Storm Drain, I don't think I need to explain why that is the case. And in Generation 8, it was able to win the World Championships in the double restricted format because it was able to counter the Kyogres very nicely, while also being pretty reasonable against things like Zacian, because it's going to be bulky enough that it will be able to survive the attacks. And one of the nice things about the Gastrodon in regards to this generation, where it wasn't available in the previous generation, is that the Intrepid Sword boost is a one-time effect. So if you yawn that Zacian, then they're forced to switch out and sacrifice their attack boost, or they're forced to stay in and fall asleep. And that's even more impactful this generation when the Intrepid Sword is only a one-time use. So then they're in a catch-22 situation. Sludge Bomb over Ice Beam, I think, is pretty reasonable, because then you can go for Stab, Terra, Poison, because Poison will help you take on the Zacians a little bit better, because if they want to hit you not very effectively, Behemoth Blade doesn't do that into your Water typing, and then Play Rough will be the move of choice, and then Poison is able to resist that. And then you get Stab on top of that. And obviously you don't want Terra Ice with Ice Beam. That's kind of pointless. So yeah, basically maximizing the physical bulk, because you can struggle for Kyogres easily. So maximize the physical bulk so you can take on the Zacians a bit better. So this is able to resist the Water Spouts pretty nicely, and it's also able to get rid of that Intrepid Sword boost. And like I've said, it's a one-time boost. So we've seen support Gyarados back in, what was it, Regulation, was it D or E that Gyarados was a support Pokemon that we saw on, like, basically the most common archetypes. It still can do exactly the same thing by going for those Thunder Waves to get the speed control, by going for the Taunts to stop the Trick Rooms and things like that. And if Gyarados isn't able to do the damage, which it probably won't unless you're in the rain, then you just go for Helping Hand instead. And the combination of Waterfall and Thunder Wave is actually pretty sweet, because then you've got the 20% chance to flinch, while you've also got the 25% chance to get the full paralysis as well. And then you're able to take on the Zacian even better by getting the Rocky Helmet chip as well. So this is able to outspeed Calyrex if you've Thunder Waved them, just +1, so you've got a bit of speed creep. Hits the bump in attack, and then the rest into defense, because its defense isn't actually that great. And Terra-wise, I've got to change the Terra, so Steel overall is the best Terra on Gyarados, in my opinion. This one can take on both Pokemon pretty well, because Milotic has a very high special defense, so it will be able to survive the Water Spouts. You'll be coiling, so you won't be taking as much damage from the opposing Zacians. And again, Zoom Lens. Trust, Zoom Lens is a good item, because one coil turns Hypnosis like 80% accurate. While you have the Zoom Lens, well then suddenly, that's adding an extra 20% on top of that 80% to turn it 96% accurate. So by only having to go for one coil, you can basically guarantee that your Hypnosises are actually going to hit. Whereas if you don't have the Zoom Lens, then suddenly you're still going to miss a reasonable amount of Hypnosis after one coil. If you've coiled twice, then it is 100% accurate, so you wouldn't need to worry about that. But in a restricted format, you're likely not going to have time to coil it twice in most games. One coil will be all you'll be afforded, and then if you've got that, you can start throwing the Hypnosis. And then obviously Muddy Water will also be 100% accurate with the Zoom Lens, even without a coil, if you are moving second. So, and then with one coil, you can hit slower Pokemon as well. But I do really rate Zoom Lens on Milotic. I think Safety Goggles is probably the second best item. And if you truly want to make it a even better Zacian and Kyogre counter, you could consider something like Moranga Berry, because then you'll be able to shrug off the Water Spout, and then seriously shrug off the Water Spouts after you got a special defense boost to compound with your defense boost that you'll get from the coil. There's nothing fancy about this EV spreads. Just go Sassy's because it's got the highest base stat for its special defense out of all the others, so it's going to get the most from the nature, and then just dumped into defense for the most amount from the coils, and then as slow as possible so that you are most likely zoom lensing against most things. And Terra Poison, I think I've mentioned it already, it's going to be able to resist the play roughs that you'd want to be going for as a Zacian player, because Behemoth Blade is resisted as a water type. And then again, Poison type as the Terra. I think the other all the other Pokemon are a poison in or out of Terra from the rest of this. But yeah, Slowbro will be able to take on the Zacians very well, because it will be able to Iron Defense and Body Press while resisting Sacred Sword again, even if you don't Terastallize, because Psychic will be able to resist the Sacred Swords, and you can even burn the Zacians with Scalds, because it's one of the few Pokemon that still has access to Scald, and then it just compounds with the Body Press and the Iron Defense that the physical attackers will not be able to break through the Slowbro. The Water Spouts will still hurt until you've got some chip damage onto the opposing Kyogre, but this will be a lot better at taking on the Zacian as well. Notice you don't have Trick Room. I don't think there's space, because you want Iron Defense to help with the body press, and you want recovery, else you're just going to be KO'd in 2 shots by a lot of things. And then Scold, just as some extra coverage, you don't want just body press. You want some extra coverage, and then getting the burns and making use of the rain that the Kyogre is hopefully set for you is going to be pretty reasonable as well. I mentioned Swampert in a previous video as well. It's another duo, but this still works against Zacian and Kyogre. It may not be as effective as Gastrodon will be, because Gastrodon is just straight up immune to the Kyogre, whereas Swampert has to sacrifice its turn going for Wide Guards to be immune to the Kyogre. But then this will be able to take on the Zacian a lot quicker. By going for one curse, then suddenly High Horsepower is just going to one-shot the Zacian. So, and then Liquidation will obviously make use of the Rain as well. Poison as your Terra type, because it's resisting Grass. And also because the Zacian would want to go for... I think you know at this point that it wants to go for Flare Off against the water types. But it can't do either against this one. Like, this is actually a super legitimate counter to both of them. It kind of sucks on its own in a vacuum, but we're trying to counter a specific duo, right? So this resists Behemoth Blade and also Play Rough, and also Close Combat / Sacred Sword. So it's going to be walling the Zacians unless they're running that niche Terra Blast, Terra Ground one. And then Kyogre, you're going to be able to resist both of its attacks as well. You can Wide Guard against them, so you'll be able to shrug off those attacks. And then if you get a stockpile, maybe Toxapex will 1v4 the entire team. Who knows? But it definitely 1v2s both Zacian and Kyogre, for sure. Like, this absolutely will. Even in a vacuum, this will 1v2 both of them. And because its attack and special attack are pathetic, you rely on the chip damage that you'll get from Infestation. You'll get chip damage from Rocky Helmet as well. You might get chip damage from getting poisons, from going for Baneful Bunker. So I don't think this Pokemon should be written off. It's very niche, but that's the entire point of this series, right? If you're looking for a Zacian Kyogre counter, I would argue this is the best one. But it's really only a Zacian and Kyogre counter. So do make sure that this perfect 6th mon, really it needs to be Zacian and Kyogre that you counter. But like, for sure, this does it. So that's going to be Zacian and Kyogre for these niche counters. Please put in the comments any Pokemon that you think I've missed that are also very good against Zacian and Kyogre. I'm sure that there will be some that I miss across all of these episodes. As well, put in the suggestions of the next restricted duo that you would want to see next. I am largely judging it based on just your suggestions, so please do put those in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like.